thank York County Emergency Management for working with me and taking me to some of the places that had the highest impact, so I appreciate that very much. We have good partnership there. So here's real quickly what I found. Generally, from the York to Rock Hill area, along that general swath, a swath of about 60 to 90 mile per hour winds. More of it was probably 60 to 70, but probably a few places that peaked out in the 80 to 90 mile per hour winds. Of course, you've probably been out there. There are numerous trees down. There are cases where some of the trees hit homes or power lines, took down power poles, things like that. So pretty impactful to the community. So a swath of those winds, 60 to 90. Second, evidence of very large hail. I think that's very surprising to anyone. We did get reports of 4-inch diameter hail, but we cannot confirm that. Okay, it may very well have been the case, but I have not seen a 4-inch diameter. We see evidence of certainly 2-3-inch type hail. Certainly possible it could have been larger. So I can't really make any statement about exactly what the hail size was, but we know it was very large. What I think was most impressive with this storm and most impactful was the combination of the wind and the hail together. Quite often you don't see that, but as you've probably been on scene, there is a number of places where the siding is stripped off of homes, indicating, and it's only on one side of the home, more basically, so it's a pretty high impact, pretty high velocity hail being blown sideways into the home. So that's the kind of thing you don't see very often, particularly in the southeast. You might see it a little more frequently in the plain states, some of the larger hail, but even there I think it's fairly rare. So that was particularly impressive. Did not see any evidence of a tornado. All damage was laid out from northwest to southeast, which is the direction that the storm was moving. So it would have been associated with a downburst and winds going in a straight line from northwest to southeast. So we saw lots of evidence of that. And the damage was also, with a tornado, you're generally going to see narrow focused damage. With this, it was kind of scattered within a swath, if that makes sense. So that indicated straight line winds. A severe thunderstorm warning was in effect at the time that the storm impacted this area. And severe thunderstorm warnings are issued for large hail and damaging winds. So that's, while this is on the higher end of a severe thunderstorm, that is what a severe thunderstorm is designed to do. So the message I would like to send is encourage everyone to take severe thunderstorm warnings seriously. Not every severe thunderstorm warning is of this magnitude and intensity, but this is the type damage that can occur with a severe thunderstorm. It does not take a tornado to cause significant damage. And final, before I take any questions, is you've heard in some cases that people had selected to only get tornado warning and not a severe thunderstorm warning with an app or a service. We encourage people to consider receiving the severe thunderstorm warnings as well because of events like this. So with that, I'll take any questions.
How soon before the storm did you actually issue the warning?
How soon before? Okay, so there was the storm kind of came out of North Carolina up by Cleveland County. And then it came down through Cherokee County in the vicinity of Gaffney, a little bit north there, through York into here. So we had warnings out along that. There was a warning that came into the York area and a second warning that went into the Rock Hill area. So honestly, I can't give you an exact number, but there was a warning out ahead of time. I can get you an exact answer if you like, but 10 minutes, 15, something like that. I should know the answer, but there was a warning out for sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
You mentioned this was unusual, the way the hail and wind combined. I guess if you can explain, does the hail just throw in and just kind of drop on its own?
Sure. Yeah, so I can take a little bit more of an explanation of what this type of storm was. So a downburst tends to happen. So let me back up. So what happened is there was a tremendous amount of ice in this storm, I believe a bit more than we anticipated. But when ice starts to form and it starts to melt, it cools off the environment. This is high up in the atmosphere, and then that's what can create the downwind that comes down so strong. So the combination of those two things are what created what happened. So that was essentially occurring in a repetitive process from basically back toward north of Gaffney all the way across here, and really went further south and east toward the coast with this storm. And so you were getting a kind of repetitive downburst of hail and wind that seemed to maximize at its worst point around Rock Hill, or at least on the south side of Rock Hill. It seems from the damage that we looked at and where the siding was damaged with the larger hail that it kind of what we call collapsed a bit there. Although it wasn't a complete collapse, it continued on, but that was where it seemed to be the worst of it was. I hope I answered your question there. So that's a process with a downburst that is known to happen. It's just not as frequent as, say, a more moist, like water coming down real strongly. We get more in this June, July timeframe. This spring, you can get these icy storms that collapse essentially from their own weight and come crashing to the ground. Okay.
You talk about the people maybe not having the right preferences set for getting warnings, so maybe they miss out on some stuff. Anything
Sure.
you're recommending that people kind of do now in order to make sure they're getting all the most up-to-date information on when these storms are coming?
Sure. There's a whole bunch of different services, so it's hard to speak to any particular one, but usually there's a settings, and then my settings might say, let me know if there's a tornado warning, or you can choose severe thunderstorm warning as well. So in some cases, people may have turned that off, is what we're at least suggesting might be happening. And to go back to whatever service you have or whatever sign up that you went through and see if it's clicked on or off. And certainly there can be a case where, hey, I don't want to get a lower end severe, but there's hard to differentiate between the two. So, yes.
Was there any thought of going with the destructive tags so the WIAs would have been activated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know we went with the considerable tag, and winds at about 70 miles an hour and 2.5 inch hail was the highest that we went. So I think it was under consideration. That's one of the things that is very difficult. So let me back up and give a little explanation. He knows more about this, maybe some of you don't know. Within a severe thunderstorm warning, we try to put what we call tags in there. And so a kind of base severe thunderstorm warning might have 60 mile an hour winds and 1 inch diameter hail. It's kind of a low end type severe thunderstorm warning. And that's what most type storms are, something like that. In this case, it started with that maybe back to the west, and then as it continued to grow and become stronger, the tags in it were bumped up to, at a peak, 2.5 inch diameter hail and 70 mile an hour winds. Now, I'll be the first to admit that didn't quite highlight exactly how strong this was. As a meteorologist in the office, you don't really know exactly what's going on underneath it. It's hailing very large. The winds are blowing exactly what you're getting. But we try to forecast that. So I believe, to answer your question, yes, it was under consideration. It's a difficult thing to do, to really pull that alarm and say, this is catastrophic type event. And so I think it was under consideration. In the end, it wasn't done. Maybe it should have, yeah, but yes.
You mentioned it was rather scattered just because of the very nature of the storm. Just
Mhm.
how scattered was it, like, as far as not necessarily the path, but I mean, how big of a space are we talking about as far as mileage is concerned?
Okay, well, what York County had put together was a kind of a swath of the damage, and it was highlighted by a box. And so we went to a number of places within that. And within I say it was scattered. I want to always compare it to a tornado, where within a tornado you have, it doesn't mean there's complete destruction, I won't say that, but it's a pretty defined area most of the time of here's damage and then there's no damage. So within that broader 2 mile wide, or roughly, don't take that exact, but something like that swath, you could ride along there and there'd be some trees down and then maybe a gap for a little bit and then a few more trees down. And so you could do that going across it and along it. And so there's just kind of a scattering of damage. In a couple cases, it was a little more intense and that got a little bit higher rating and things like that. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm going out there. Yes?
Thank you for having us. Have you come up with at least a general dollar amount of the damage, and since the National Weather Service is a federal agency, right?
We are federal, yes.
Is there the potential for a disaster declaration for Rock Hill or York County? Okay,
So first of all, that is handled by York County Emergency Management. I don't know if you want to have anything to say about that, but probably a little preliminary for that, but do you want to?
Yeah, we don't really have a handle on numbers to get us to that point, but For FEMA declarations, I want to say for us to be eligible, we're a little over $9 million and maybe 100 houses destroyed, and I don't think we're seeing that. Now, there may be something out there that I'm not aware of, but right now, at this time, that's kind of where we are. More minor, some moderate damage, maybe 1 or 2 destroyed, but.
Is there such a thing as a state declaration, emergency declaration?
Sure, but there's no financial resources that come along with that.
Okay.
But you said you didn't know dollars, but a total damage, vehicles, siding, whatever, are we talking millions?
I mean, I would assume so, especially considering the public infrastructure, debris cleanup, trees and that kind of stuff. I think, in the millions, but maybe not, 9.5. So.
Okay.
Okay.
But Andrew, that's going to be going on for a long time. So yeah.
And our readers are not meteorologists like this guy. When you say a long time, does it take a week to do recovery?
Well, you were just listening to the National Weather Service, and we want to say that the takeaway here, no evidence of a tornado, but we did see a lot of damage from York to Rock Hill. Let's bring in meteorologist KJ Jacobs now. And KJ, what did you take away from that press conference?
That's right, Jane. What's most impressive when it comes to these big weather events is what type of an event is it going to be? Is it going to be a hail event? Is it going to be a flood event? Is it going to be tornadic? And what's most memorable about this one is that it's a hail event. It's one that produced an enormous amount of hail, as well as the intensity and the coverage of that hail. And I want to take you back to radar. I was streaming live on WCNC Plus. That's one way that you can get that notification when we do have severe weather in our area. And this storm really started to produce some small hail back into northwest York County. And you can see this color table here. Notice how we're seeing these brighter colors coming in. See the blues, the purples, and the pinks and reds. This is not what we typically see when we're talking about, say, heavy rain. So this is what radar is depicting as that hail, and notice how it intensified. That's because the storm got much stronger as it moved over Rock Hill. The intensity of the storm, the updraft, and that produced some of the large hail that as a result did fall down to the ground. And you see I-77 here, and we got numerous reports coming in of cars just pummeled on I-77 and surrounding areas right here in York County, moving through Rock Hill. And you can see this report here. Notice this was sent in about 4:35, between 4:35 and 4:40. Yes, I think many of you may forget that hail is also a form of precipitation of solid ice. So just imagine that ice falling like rain coming down. That was the case over the weekend, Saturday afternoon, headed into Saturday evening. And I want to show you this 3D image here. This is that hail core. Notice how this updraft was just so strong that it was able to hold those ice particles up there, and they were just able to get so large, and then at some point they were not able to maintain that elevation and then fell to the ground at the size of a golf ball. We're talking about 1.75 inches at speeds of 60 to 65 miles an hour. So yes, no wonder we had some windows crashed out of cars, broken glass and things of that nature, and numerous reports of damage due to the hail that fell with this system. Here's another report of some hail here. You can see it there, 3 in that person's hand, about the size of a golf ball. Here's a hail chart, Jane, just to give an indication of hail size. And from that report, they have been able to give us that preliminary report that we've had between 2 to 3 inch in diameter size hail from this event. So just the coverage, the intensity of the hail, and that's why we want to make sure that everyone's always staying weather aware when we're tracking big weather events in terms of severe weather, because with any strong thunderstorm, we can have hail. So hail can happen really anywhere when we have those strong storms happening. So we are in that severe weather season right now. So We can always have multiple rounds of storms, and this storm actually traveled through Cleveland County, Cherokee, into York County. I followed this storm. I was tracking right along with you all as it moved its way through Chesterfield County. Eventually, it did start to break up as it moved out of our area, and that hail core really started to let up across the area. So this is just one event in terms of just having that hail that fell across the area, Jane. But the good news is we don't have a report of a tornado, but Chief Meteorologist Brad will tell us all wind is wind, and wind really did play a big part in this storm in terms of the damage that was left behind.
Exactly. KJ and Brad is at that press conference as well. He'll bring us more at 4 o'clock. The National Weather Service also telling us that there were reports of 4-inch diameter hail, but they couldn't confirm that. But as you heard from KJ, 2 to 3-inch hail was confirmed. There's evidence of that. Message here from the National Weather Service: although it's not a tornado, those severe thunderstorm warnings are to be taken seriously. We are going to continue following the latest out of York County. Make sure to join us at 4 o'clock for more coverage. Thanks for joining us. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.